Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran, and we'll start tonight with the result of our play from the previous episode. A1 throws a forward pass from the B20 yard line. B1 intercepts on his own 2-yard line and circles back into his end zone. And while B1 is in the end zone, the covering official inadvertently sounds their whistle. And so the key we were trying to put down here is that B1 is going back into the end zone, not with their momentum, of kind of their own free will, if you will. So technically, the result of the play is a safety, but we do have an inadvertent whistle with B in possession. And so because B is in possession, when the IW occurs, not prior to, B has the option to choose either to replay the down or I guess take the result of the safety, which not likely, but we'll give them that choice. Odds are they'll replay the down. A, unfortunately, in this case, doesn't have an option. I guess they're going to get the ball back and we're going to replay the down, but A doesn't have a choice there because the whistle was sounded after the possession happened, and that's the part we wanted to have everyone key in on.
This is a really good problem. It's one that forces us to choose how we're going to apply the inadvertent whistle protections and that rule. You have to think, though, the team that has the option is the team in possession when the whistle sounds. I think it's easy here to just automatically think safety or touchback. But this is one where you have to think B is in possession. Where's the ball? How did it get there? And who's got an option there? B has the option here. I guess there's a strange universe where they might choose to enforce a safety on themselves, but chances are pretty good that they're going to just replay the down there, given what we have. But it's a really interesting play and one to think through should you ever be in this position.
And we did cover our. Oh, sorry, Ryan. I was just going to add. We did cover our inadvertent whistles, or our inadvertent whistle episode a year ago, I think. And as a result, we got some feedback again that some folks had some inadvertent whistles that weekend. So we do apologize for that. But it is always good to kind of prep these. It happens. We don't want it to happen. We'll burn the incense and make sure nobody has any inadvertent whistles this year. We'll do our best, but if it does happen, just know who has the option to replay the down or what we're going to do about it.
That's why it's good to discuss these in the off season instead of mid season. So
go outside right now and just blow your whistle as many times as you can and get all your IWs out of the way in your backyard.
This week, we're going to complete our series looking at all aspects of the game related to the goal line. We're going to discuss impetus or force, and then we're going to look at some examples of plays involving the goal line.
So as usual, we'll start with the high school level, and then we'll move on to the college level. So going back to force, this is in Rule 8. And again, all of our touchdown, touchback, and safety, that's all in Rule 8 for both levels. But in high school, force is the responsibility of forcing the ball from the field of play across the goal line, and that's attributed to the player who carries, snaps, passes, fumbles, or kicks the ball, unless a new force is applied to either a grounded backward pass, kick, or fumble. So that force is maintained until a new force is applied, but that force has to take place after the ball's touched the ground. So the muffing or batting of a pass or a kick or a fumble is not considered a new force. So think about, offense throwing the pass in the end zone and the defender knocks it down in the end zone. That's not a new force applied with that defender batting that pass down. So, and secondarily, the accidental touching of a loose ball by a player who was blocked into the ball is also ignored, just like on a punt when it comes to force touching. We don't pay attention to that either. Then on the college side, our responsibility and impetus is the title. The team responsible for the ball being out of bounds behind a goal line or being dead in possession of a player on, above, or behind a goal line is the team whose player carries the ball or imparts an impetus to it that puts a new force on it. So an initial impetus is, again, imparted by a player who kicks, passes, snaps, or fumbles the ball. And that player is then considered responsible for the ball's progress in any direction, even though its course is deflected or reversed after striking the ground. Kind of a bit of a mouthful there. I'd probably advise maybe looking at like a Reading study guide to kind of break down force a little bit more. I think that can give a lot of helpful examples.
Yeah, I think that's really useful. And we're going to discuss some interchangeably using the terms force and impetus. The high school rulebook uses the term force. College rulebook at 8.7 uses the terms impetus. In my head, I think of them as the same thing. Who's responsible for a ball getting to where it is? So we'll use those words interchangeably, even though if you're used to just one or other from the from the rule book. One of the things that I just want to add on the college level here, the impetus, or at least the initial impetus, can end at some point based on another act. So the initial impetus that can come from an act, a kick, a pass, a snap, a fumble, whatever it is, that's considered to be expended, and the responsibility for the ball's progress is charged to a different player if that player kicks a ball that's not in a player's possession or bats a loose ball after it strikes the ground. If the ball comes to rest and that player gives it new impetus by any contact with it, other than through forced touching.
That's a great point too. Think about if a player were to, at the college level, fumble the ball, and offense they going in, fumbles the ball, and then a B player comes along and kicks it through the end zone. That's where that would come into play. We aren't going to charge the impetus or force or the responsibility to that initial offensive player that's now changed. So, and lastly, a loose ball is going to retain its original status too, even if we have a new impetus. So, like a kick.
Right, and we'll have some examples later in the episode that covers these scenarios where we do have an impetus or a force that is expended, and there's a new force or impetus put on the ball, and then we have to think through who's ultimately responsible for it ending up where it is. So that's impetus and force, some similar concepts that are important to discuss. And admittedly, these are always weaknesses of mine whenever we're taking tests. So it's an area that I really study a lot. We'll be looking at illegal kicking and batting. So in the high school rule book, you can go to Rule 9-7, which tells us that players aren't to intentionally kick the ball other than in a free or scrimmage kick. No player is permitted to bat a loose ball other than a pass or a fumble in flight or a low scrimmage kick in flight, which he is attempting to block in or behind the neutral zone. However, a player of a kicking team may bat the ball toward his own goal line if it's a grounded scrimmage kick beyond the neutral zone, and that player may also bat toward his goal line a scrimmage kick in flight beyond the neutral zone if there's no R player in position to catch the ball. Now, any pass in flight, and this will apply at either level, any pass in flight may be batted in any direction by an eligible receiver unless it's a backward pass batted forward by the passing team. So as long as it's a forward pass, a player can bat the ball to another player as long as that original player was an eligible receiver who's eligible to touch the ball. A ball in player possession shall not be batted forward by a player of the team that's in possession. So that's the high school rules on illegal kicking and batting. For college, we'll look at Rule 9-4. So batting a loose ball, again, while a pass is in flight, only a player eligible to touch the ball can bat it in any direction. Any player may block a scrimmage kick in the field of play or the end zone. No player shall bat other loose balls forward in the field of play or in any direction if the ball is in the end zone. So that's an important one for us to keep in mind. You can't bat a loose ball forward, but you can bat it backwards. There's going to be no foul there, but a loose ball can't be batted forward, or else we'll have that 10-yard penalty for illegal batting. A backward pass that's in flight is not to be batted forward by the passing team. So quarterbacks gets the snap, turns, throws a backward pass. The receiver realizes it's going to be a loss on the play, so he bats it forward. That's an illegal batting. That defender can bat it forward for him toward the A's goal line there. Now, batting a ball in possession, a ball that's in player possession, may not be batted forward by a player of that team. So that covers illegal batting. Illegal kicking of the ball. A player shall not kick a loose ball, a forward pass, or a ball being held for a place kick by an opponent. Those acts don't change the status of the loose ball or forward pass, but if the player holding the ball for a place kick loses possession during a scrimmage down, it's a fumble and a loose ball. If during a free kick, the ball would remain dead there. And so again, here we'd have 10 yards plus loss of down for fouls by Team A if the loss of down is not in conflict with other rules. So those are the rules on illegal batting and kicking. We've talked about force and impetus in this episode. Over the last few episodes, we've discussed touchdowns, safeties, touchbacks. We've discussed the momentum exception. So that's, in essence, gives us the rule, the lay of the land when it comes to the goal line. So at this point, we're going to look at a number of plays, whether kick plays, passing plays, runs, whatever, that incorporate these concepts. And I'll turn it over to Michael to get started with that.
Yeah, and I think the whole point of a lot of these batting rules that are in place are to try to minimize an advantage, right? Um, I'm forgetting the teams. The Raiders were involved. I think it was back in the '80s. The infamous what do they call that? It was a fourth down play, and the quarterback's rolling, and he kind of intentionally fumbles, and multiple players are kind of continuing to bat it. I'm using air quotes down the field, making it look like they're fumbling, and I think they end up scoring a touchdown. This is great radio, I'm sure, but that's what we're trying to avoid is moving the ball in a fashion that gives the team a distinct advantage, not by running it or passing it. So
yeah, and especially
if it looks
college.
funny. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, Michael. No, I was just going to say that's sort of the reason for the fourth down fumble rule in college, to prevent that exact type of scenario and an advantage from that.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a couple of plays we'll go through, and we will provide the answers on this episode, so that hopefully will make it a little more enjoyable. Straightforward, pretty simple. First one, a free kick crossing B or R's goal line lands in the end zone untouched. We see this quite a lot. It's just a touchback at both levels. If in the high school world, obviously if a free kick crosses the goal line, it doesn't matter what happens at that point. It's a touchback. And in the college world, it has to be untouched by Team B. So we just have a touchback and on we go.
And just to make sure everybody's on the same page here, we're going to use the term somewhat interchangeably, but in terms of team designations, I know at the high school level, we would use K and R for the kicking team and the receiving team. In college, it's always A or B. So if we say B and we're talking about a kick play, we're talking about the receivers, or if we say A, we're talking about the kicking team, and vice versa there. So I just want to say that because I am almost undoubtedly going to forget that as we go forward and just use either B or whatever it may be. So I just want to set that forth early on here.
That's a good clarification.
So similar play, we're still talking about free kicks. We have a free kick that's muffed at either B or R's 2-yard line and then lands in the end zone where it lies untouched. In high school, this is going to be a touchback. Again, the force that put it in the end zone was that kick by A, or I guess K, but the ball broke the plane of the goal line. We're going to have a touchback. In college, though, this is live ball, so it's important for whoever's on the goal line, the two short wings, or the referee not to kill this one. It's a live ball. B has to cover the ball to get a touchback. If A recovers while it's in the end zone and it's live, it's going to be a touchdown for A.
One thing we didn't talk about with mechanics, I just thought about a play like this. In 7-man, obviously you have both line of scrimmage officials on the goal line ready to go. High school, we're kind of staggered, right? I know as an H, I'm 30 yards away and our umpire's 20. I think if you see something fishy, obviously if it's muffed on the 2 and rolls into the end zone, the referee needs to be ready to rule on that. But if it's muffed at the 5 and kind of rolling, if you're an umpire or an H, there's no harm in retreating back to get in a better position. You don't necessarily have to be on the goal line, but you can go back and help your referee out to get an angle. And I know we want to pick up blocks, hold and low blocks, but at that moment in time, we talk about first things first. That goal line's important. Right. We need to know if it's a touchback or maybe the returner fields it and then stumbles back into the end zone, not with the momentum rule. Or maybe they do, and we need to know where their momentum is too. So all things to think about. We didn't cover that in our mechanics episode, so I want to cover that there. So let's move on. So we got a free kick or a scrimmage kick, either or, goes further than expected, and the returner retreats and catches it at their own 3, and his momentum carries him into the end zone where he is immediately tackled. So this is our straightforward bread and butter momentum rule. It's going to be the same in both high school and college. If they're catching that ball in between the 5 and the goal line and going into the end zone, they're tackled whether right away or 10 seconds pass, as long as they stay in that end zone. Small caveat, in college, we talked about it earlier, but as long as it's in that end zone, the momentum is given and we're going to bring the ball back out to the 3.
Yeah, and the next one's going to be a very similar play, just slightly different, and makes us think a little differently on it. Same setup, we're going to have a free or a scrimmage kick. However, this one is going to hit the ground and bounce at the B7. As in the play before, B or R is retreating, and they catch it again at their own 3-yard line. That returner's momentum carries him into the end zone where he is tackled. The result here is exactly the same. It's going to be BRR's ball at the B3 at both levels. The momentum exception applies again. Just because it bounced at the B7, that has no impact on this play. It's where does he get possession of it? Here, it's at the B3, so it's between the 5 and the goal line. So the momentum exception can once again apply. For another slight variation on this, I'll give it back to Michael now.
So we'll use that same play we've been building off of, and the ball is caught. It's, again, free kick or scrimmage kick, caught at the 3, going into the end zone. And at this point, either just, bad luck or gets hit, the returner fumbles the ball, and the ball rolls up out of bounds at the 2-yard line. So now in college, we're going to keep the momentum on. The rule outlines that if the ball is fumbled forward and out of bounds, we would bring that back to the spot of the fumble, which would be the end zone, which then keeps the momentum on. So we'll go back to the 3. In high school, we're not so lucky. We don't have a forward fumble out of bounds rule. So if he fumbles the ball in the end zone and it then rolls up forward to the 2-yard line in this case, that's going to be the return team's ball at the 2-yard line. So luckily it's still close enough, but
Right.
The big takeaway here, there's no touchback. Nobody's getting a touchback.
Right. No touchback, no safety.
Yeah.
Let's do another slight variation, maybe a little bit simpler. We have a free or scrimmage kick that bounces at the B7. BRR retreats and catches it at his own 3. His momentum takes him into the end zone. In this play, he's zigging and zagging around the end zone, running, avoiding tackles for a while, but eventually he is tackled. Again, even if he takes 5 seconds off the clock or what have you, running around the end zone, he never leaves the end zone. The momentum exception is going to apply, so it's still going to be his ball at the B3, or his team's ball if they're on 3, at both levels, regardless of the fact that he runs around for a while and eventually gets tackled in his own end zone. We'll have a slightly different play here now from Michael.
And hopefully while he's zigging and zagging, there's no foul. Hopefully nobody bucks or blocks below the waist.
Right.
That's a different episode. So
right.
If you'd like to hear us talk about those kind of penalties, we can put a show together and let us know. Moving on, we're going back to a free kick. Free kick touched by the return team at the B4, rolls into the end zone. And to prevent A or K from recovering it, B15 bats the ball over the end line. And this kind of goes back to what we talked about. High school, it's already a touchback. As soon as it crosses the goal line, referee, in this case, should be blowing the whistle, moving into a position to have some good dead ball officiating and making sure nothing silly happens. But in college, that ball's still live, as we talked about earlier, and this is going to be a foul for illegal batting. While we can bat the ball towards your own goal line, once you're in that end zone, you cannot bat that ball in any direction. So we have an illegal batting foul. If team A decides to accept this, the return team is going to be penalized 2 yards, and the ball is re-kicked. So in the college world, we would kick then from the A45. But this is not going to be a safety because it's a foul during a loose ball play, and the only spot we can put this on is the previous spot. So if the kicking team decides to decline the penalty, then we would have a touchback because it's A's kick that put the ball into the end zone. And there's no new force at that point because the ball's already in the end zone. A little bit tricky on that one. But again, good heads up.
It's a little bit tricky, and if you're working both levels, you need to be mindful of the differences here. The high school rule book just draws a very sharp line as to when we're going to have a touchback. So here, the batting, it doesn't matter. The ball's dead as soon as it crosses the goal line here. And so the rest of the play, despite being written perhaps to be a little bit tricky, it's a pretty simple play at the high school level. College level is going to be a little more complex, but if you just think through where you could possibly enforce any foul and how the ball got into the end zone, I think that one's a little bit simpler. Again, as Michael said, we're going to have a few variations on just a couple themes on this episode, so let's change that one up a bit. And let's say that we have a free kick that's touched by the return team at their own 4-yard line, and it comes to a stop at the B2. So we have a grounded ball at the B2. To prevent the kicking team from recovering the ball, B15 kicks the ball over his own end line. All right, so the result of the play, it's a safety at both levels. The receiving team applied a new force to a grounded kick, and that force is what placed the ball behind its own end line. If the penalty for illegal kicking is accepted, the penalty is enforced at the previous spot, and the kicking team will re-kick once the penalty is enforced. If it's declined, it's a safety, and the receiving team will then have a free kick from its own 20.
So this is where if you're a sideline official, at the high school level, again, we talked about the U and the H on kickoffs. If you have to move back towards the goal line to get a better angle, that's perfectly appropriate. H and L, though, be prepared to talk to your respective coach and get options on what they want to do, depending upon the time of the score. From the college perspective, your F and your S would be obviously miles from the goal line, but you can still get that information relayed to a coach and really have good coach communication to try to expedite the process.
Yeah, especially at the college level. So what you're talking about there, Michael, is that the F and the S are going to be nearest to the coaches, whereas H, L, and R are probably going to be in a pretty intense discussion to what just happened here. So this is one of those areas where when H, L, and R are talking about this, turn on your mics so that the S and the F can then be coaches and they can communicate, what's going on so that we can be pretty quick in enforcing whatever is chosen here. And
we should clarify when you say mic, we don't mean field mic. We mean your radios, right?
Correct.
Yeah, if you're a referee, don't turn on your stadium mic to have a discussion.
Correct. Your O2O, if you want to use that term, or your crew communication devices, have that microphone on, just so that the whole crew can hear it, and F and S can be communicating with the coaches, both the one who's going to have an option and the one who's something's going to happen to his team, so that they know what's going on and what occurred. And chances are, after a screwy play like this, they're going to have a pretty decent idea as to what just happened anyway. But we need to be crisp and concise in giving them their options on this as well.
So another one's going to be a little tricky. We have a free kick or scrimmage kick, and it's caught by a returner at the B2. We'll say B10 in this case. Player 10, I guess I should say. He catches it at the B2. He advances to his own 5-yard line where he hands off to B23 for kind of a trickery reverse play. And B23 then fumbles the handoff, and the ball rolls over B's end line. So in both levels, we're going to have a safety. The kick is already over. We had a catch. We had a recovery. The kick has ended. That impetus is done. Impetus force, again, we're going to use it both of them interchangeably. But the new force that put the ball over the end line is that fumble from the second B player.
Right. And we're going to switch gears a little bit here. We've talked solely about free kicks and our scrimmage kicks so far. So let's talk about some standard offensive plays. So let's say it's A's ball deep in its own territory. Let's say it's at the A2. So the quarterback, A10, retreats to his end zone after the snap. While he's back there looking for a receiver, A77 is flagged for holding in the end zone. A's pass is complete to A88 to A15. The result of this is a safety at both levels. A holding foul in the end zone results in a safety. So this is one we have to keep in mind with the rule change in high school there. Mm-hmm. If you have a hold behind the line, we're going to enforce that from the previous spot. However, we're still going to have a safety if that hold occurs in the end zone. That has not changed despite the rule change. Now, B could decline the foul, but let's say that it was 1st and 10 at the A2. It's complete to the A15. So A has a first down. So it's unlikely that B's going to decline it. I suppose stranger things have happened. Maybe they're down 6 and there's 20 seconds and they want to have a chance at an interception or a fumble or something. The safety doesn't help them. But for the most part, this play, they're going to take the safety, which would mean that A would then have a free kick from its own 20. All right, a similar play. A's ball, 1st and 10 at the A2. Quarterback A10 turns at the snap and throws a pass to A88, who, as in the previous play, is standing on the goal line. A88 once again bobbles the pass, but this time B20 falls on it in A's end zone. So the result, pretty simple. It's going to be a touchdown for B at either level.
One thing you all might notice with these questions, they all sound very similar, and we've been changing 1 or 2 word items, whether it's the team, then possession, or how the ball's there. I'd encourage everyone, if you're going through a quiz or a study guide, take a question and then change one thing. What if hold happens here? What if instead of batting, it's kicking? What if instead of, it's possessed here? What if we have, heaven forbid, the inadvertent whistle? Something along those lines. Just add little bits and pieces, and it'll get you in the rule book too. It's always a big help. So a lot of the quizzes that Ryan and I come across change things just ever so slightly. It looks like the same question,
right?
And then It's usually not, and they get you. So
Well,
moving on. Oh yeah, go ahead.
the CFO test is kind of famous for that. You can have 6 or 7 questions in a row where there's just the slightest variation, and if
Right.
you're not thinking through every term in the question, you may well miss one or more of them just because you're not changing with what the question is changing there. So all of these, and this is just our thinking here, these concepts are all the same, but if the play changes ever so slightly, we can have pretty drastically different results, which I think is what's being shown with these examples so far. But sorry to interrupt you there, Michael.
No, good one. Moving on. A's ball, 1st and 10 at the A2. So again, right where we are. QB A10 turns the snap and hands this time is going to hand the ball to A28, who's tackled near the goal line. H&L placed the ball at a spot where the nose is in the field of play, but the back of the ball over the goal line. I was going to see how long I could hold that pause just for dramatic effect. It is a safety. It is a safety at both levels, and we'll have a kick. And the reason being that the whole, it's just kind of the axiom of officiating, the whole ball has to make it out of the end zone. The whole ball went in, the whole ball's got to come out. It is a plane, so if it's been broken, it's a safety.
Right. And so we talked last week about the mechanics when we're close to the goal line. So here, at either level, H and L are going to be crashing the goal line at the snap because we're snapping at the 2, and then should have a pretty tight spot to the goal line here. And as Michael said, the goal line is a plane. If it's just coming out of their own end zone, we'll have a safety. If it's going into the other end zone and we've just broken it, of course, it's a touchdown. But the placement is important here, and the whole ball has to be over the goal line, not just some part of it. So let's take another similar play to these. A's ball, once again, 1st and 10 at its own 2. The quarterback, A10, turns at the snap and throws a pass to A88, who, once again, is standing on the goal line. A88 sees he's about to be tackled, and so he bats the ball backwards over A's end line. So that's going to be a safety at both levels. A will have a free kick from its own 20.
And it's not up here because he did bat it backwards, right?
Right.
He didn't go forwards with it, but he goes backwards with it. And because of that, hypothetically, if the ball didn't make it over the end line, the ball's still live. So always be ready for that.
Correct. Yep.
So again, A's ball, 1st and 10 at the A2. A's struggling to move the ball, it seems, today. So they're on the A2 again. QB A10 turns the snap, throws a pass to 88, who again is on the goal line. They really like this play. B30 bats the pass forward over A's end line. And when we mean forward, meaning in B's direction.
Correct.
In this case, a little odd. It is a safety. This being the fact that the ball, when we're trying to visualize this play, visualize the ball already in the end zone with A88 on the goal line there. And now as B has batted this, the batting of a pass that's in flight is not considered a new force. And again, it's not an illegal bat here because, again, the ball hasn't been grounded. So a smart play by D. He gets his team 2 points and the ball.
Yeah, this is often a test question. I think in reality, if B has time to think about it on the field, he'll try to keep it in the end zone because it's going to be a backwards pass, so it's a live ball. So he'd probably rather get the 7 than the 2. But either way, points are points, and whatever comes to mind at the time, I think is going to be how he reacts. And sometimes you're just not able to process everything that fast, so it's just hitting the ball and getting the safety here. Or if he's able to keep it in, then he potentially has 7. So just slight variations of what you might see on the field on these types of plays. Now, for our next couple plays, we're going to go to the other end of the field. A's finally gotten some momentum going. They're knocking on the door. So we'll have A's ball, 1st and goal at the B8. Quarterback A10 hands off to A28 at the B10. At the B6, B27 punches the ball out of A28's hand, and it rolls out of bounds at the B2. So in high school, we're going to have 2nd and goal at the B2. The clock will be dead. In college, this is a forward fumble out of bounds, which means that it's going to be brought back to the spot of the fumble. We're going to have 2nd and goal at the B6. The clock's going to start on the ready.
Very good points to bring out there, too, clock status. Knowing when we're going to start that clock, when we're going to stop that clock at both levels. Always something to be mindful of, especially when we're down near the goal line or any time of the game, because it's very often critical. Again, still down by the the plus side of the field here. A's ball, first and goal at the B8. A10 again hands off to A28 at the B10. At the B6, B27 punches the ball out of A28's hand. And it rolls forward and hits the pylon. So the pylon makes things a little more tricky. It's now a touchback. B's punch, again, is not considered a new force because, again, he's just knocking it loose. A is responsible for the ball being out of bounds behind its opponent's goal line. And once the ball has hit the pylon, it's out of play, it's out of bounds. It's considered beyond that goal line, even though the pylon sits on the line there. And again, I don't think we talked about this, but if you're walking the fields before a game, your pylon should be sitting on the goal line and at the sideline. Yep. And by rule, that is now out of bounds behind the goal line. So it's B's ball, first and 10 from its own 20.
Yep. Now we're going to get to some passes near B's goal line. So A's driven. This time they're deciding to throw the ball. So you have quarterback A10, it's first and goal at the B8. A10 passes to A81, who jumps up and catches the ball. He possesses the ball 1 yard deep in the end zone. B31 grasps A81 and pushes him forward. A81 comes down at the B1, inbounds, and retains possession of the ball. The result of the play at either level is a touchdown for A.
And for A, good point. And what we're trying to do here, the base of this rule is to award that forward progress. I know this changed recently at the college level, but as long as the player has firm control of that ball over the end line, it's a touchdown.
Right. Well, the goal line.
What did I say? End line?
Yeah, end line.
I did, didn't I? I'm sorry, folks. Goal line.
Not that I haven't misspoken, but it
just all these plays are running together. Excuse me, goal line. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
All right. A's ball, first and goal at the B8. QB A10 passes to A81, who jumps, bats the ball while he's one in the end zone, and A17 catches the ball in B's end zone. This is a touchdown. Any eligible receiver may bat a ball that is in flight. There's no penalty for that.
Yep. Let's go. We've talked a little bit about scrimmage. Let's put this in let's put some responsibility on the punters now, though. So A's ball, 4th and 12 at the A2. Punter A47 is standing just in front of his own end line. Probably not the ideal spot for any punter at any level that we're talking about. The snap sails over his head and goes over the end line. It's probably a fairly simple play that you're used to, but just for clarification's sake, of course, this is a safety. There'll be 2 points for Team B. A will have a free kick from its own 20.
So in a similar vein, we'll bring it out a little bit. A's ball, 4th and 12 at their own 20. Punter A47 is standing on his 5. He muffs the snap. It's on the ground at the A2, so just behind him. He turns and kicks the ball over his end line. The result of this play, again, is a safety. However, there's a slight caveat. Depending upon the circumstances, Team B could have some options. They could take the result of play as a safety, or they could choose to accept the penalty for an illegal kick. And we're going to enforce that from the 2-yard line. That penalty also carries a loss of down. So that will then give them the ball at the A1. We'd go half the distance from that.
Right. I just want to point out, we had a similar play earlier. We had a grounded ball on a free kick that was kicked over the end line. And there wasn't an option for A to enforce the spot there because, again, we have to think through how we enforce penalties on free kick plays versus scrimmage kick plays. Who's going to be next to put the ball in play? And that lets us know, do we have to go back to the previous spot, which on the free kick play, that's how it would have to be enforced. Whereas here we have a scrimmage kick play. So we have spots on the field where we could enforce this illegal kick from that may prove advantageous for B. They may want to just take the ball at the A1 and have a yard to go for a touchdown versus taking the 2 points for the safety. So that's part of what I wanted to highlight here, what we wanted to highlight in terms of thinking through similar plays where we have an illegal kick that goes over an end line, but those are going to be enforced very differently if we have a free kick play versus a scrimmage kick play.
Yeah, I think this is one where you just ask the coach, do you want the safety or do you want the ball by the coach, the defensive coach in this case, Team B's coach? Do you want the safety or would you like, first and goal with the 1? See what he wants to do.
Right. So those are all the plays that we have for this week. I think we've tried to get a pretty good cross section of some of the weird plays that happen around the goal line. We've looked at offensive plays. We've looked at free kicks. We've looked at scrimmage kicks. Those are the ones that you're going to see most often. However, if you have some other scenarios that you've either seen before or thought of, please send them our way. We'd love to discuss those with you, and we'd love to hear from you. If you have any others that you just think up and want to think, hey, what would we do in this scenario? Same thing, send it to us. We're happy to discuss that with you. As always, you can send that to learnyourstripes@gmail.com. And we'll go through that with you because chances are pretty good Michael and I may well learn something ourselves from that.
Yeah, we'll have to look it up too.
And so we're always very appreciative for those opportunities. But that's all the plays that we had this week. And we want to thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Learn Your Stripes. On our next episode, we're going to discuss rule changes this season, both at the high school and college levels. But as always, we're going to leave you now with a play to consider.
So we'll get away from the goal line. I think we've left our fans with enough goal line action for a little while. So we'll come back out to the middle of the field. 3rd and 10 from the A40. A12 hands off to A22, who runs to the right. B27 knocks the ball loose at the A37. Seeing that B27 is about to pick up the loose ball, A88 kicks the ball, and it rolls out of bounds at the A35. A76 was flagged for holding on the play at the A38. So what is the ruling in high school and in college? Who's going to put the ball in play next? And what is your enforcement? And what's our clock status?
Yeah, it may take me a week or two to figure this one out myself. So it's a really good problem there, Michael. But as usual, we're going to discuss that play at the start of our next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made any mistakes today, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can also contact us there if you're interested in sponsoring an episode or advertising on the show. You can find us on your app of choice or obtain episodes at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast, on Instagram at the same name, and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoy the podcast, please tell your friends and rate us 5 stars and leave a review on your app of choice. We'll see you back here soon. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.